Unlike England, Wales has removed statutory testing at the end of Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3. The emphasis is now firmly focused on good quality statutory teacher assessment at the end of each key stage. Guidance has been provided by the Welsh Assembly Government through the Qualifications, Curriculum and Assessment Authority for Wales. Lynn Codling, a head teacher from Portsmouth, is passionate about assessment. What can she find out about the Welsh experience and how can we learn from Welsh schools?
I'd be very interested in finding out more about what's happening in the Welsh system. I know a small amount about it, as probably do a lot of head teachers, but I'm very interested in finding out exactly how does it make a difference? Is it going to make a difference? Or are teachers still going to feel bound that they've got to give children some kind of tests at the end of the key stage?
So Lynn's on her way to Cardiff to look at how teachers are working without statutory tests. She'll learn about work being undertaken within the Cardiff LEA. They've focused on effective cross-phase moderation at Key Stage 2 and 3, leading to valid and reliable teacher assessment and cluster group portfolios. The project is being led by Jan Payne and Gareth Williams.
We looked at cluster groups involving the primaries and their feeder, their secondary school. And we looked at samples of work, collecting samples of working and working on moderating and levelling them and looking at the consistency and getting it so it was cross-phase, so that what was at level 5 in year 7 would look the same in primary.
And so really what we've attempted to do here is to come and help provide them with a process and structure a process upon which they can put their own mark and then come up with something that actually is of a very high standard and quality.
That was so interesting. I'm really, really looking forward to seeing the schools now this afternoon, to see it in action. I've learnt so much, and it will be really interesting to be able to talk to some of the teachers and pupils and parents about their views on what they feel about it as well.
Lynn's off to Peter Lee Primary, the first school on her itinerary, where acting head Peter Hodgkins has been implementing change.
And have you found that all staff have been excited by the change? Are they nervous about the change? Is there a mixture of reactions?
I think staff are positive about the change. I think they felt that there was an agreement that the SAT level, as level 3 or 4, didn't tell enough about the child.
The staff continue to use a broad range of methods to assess their children.
We are carrying on with using the optional material to supplement the teacher assessments that are ongoing in the classroom and to build up a bigger picture that way.
A major element in producing reliable teacher assessment is seen to be in-house moderation.
Can I just ask
Teachers Sian Webb and Kevin Thomas have been using the LEA's guidelines to put new systems in place within the school.
Now every teacher's got to be accountable, everybody's got to know, be aware of the assessment process and be singing, well, literally from the same song sheet. So hopefully when we went on this moderation course, the whole point of it was to know that sort of every school in the cluster area literally had the same criteria set and also had the same outcomes at the end of the day.
As part of the moderation project, Sian Webb has produced a document that the staff have agreed to work on after school.
So tonight we're going to go home with a document that I've produced of children's work in this school and look at it individually and come back in a week's time with some sort of idea of a level for each child, and that then will be used to level work throughout the school. Since the
Sian Webb introduced the document in a staff meeting.
That we need to look as a school at the assessment process to make sure really that we're all consistent. Right, what I've done here is produced a little document from work in the school, right? Hopefully I've looked at different work which will be geared towards certain levels. What I want you to do is take it home, look at it. At the back, then, you have the criteria for...
Using these criteria, the staff will make judgments on the levels of children's work. In a week, they will return and discuss the work. With this process completed, the school will have moderated examples of work that anyone will be able to refer to when marking. The overall aim is to ensure that all teacher assessment is reliable and fair.
Because of the moderation that we're doing at present, we're going to totally get rid of SATs testing and we're going to just concentrate on the levels. Yeah. Hopefully every class teacher now will be able to give a child a level which will then go through the school with them, so then we can use that as our tracking of individual children.
They were great. It's really early days of the project yet, but they've taken it on board and the teachers are really trying to implement things and find different ways of doing it, whilst at the same time trying to look at a way of consistently spreading it across the school.
Next up, Pentrabane Primary. Lynn's here to meet Head Dave Lambert and Assessment Coordinator Julia Perry. In Pentrabane, teachers have been involving children in their own assessment. Lynn's keen to hear about it.
Excited?
They enjoy the fact that they're all involved in their own assessment, because it gives them the feeling that, oh yeah, I have achieved my WALT, I do know what I'm doing, and it just gives them peace of mind and makes them feel a little bit more positive about the actual task that they're doing.
Although information for teacher assessment can be gathered throughout a class, Julia finds that the plenary is a good time to learn more about her pupils' understanding.
The children self-assess, we
Right.
ask questions, what did you find difficult, what did you find easy, what were the strategies that you used to solve any problems that you've had.
But what do the children think of it? Lynn took the opportunity to talk to some of them.
And just quick warm-up questions and that.
They're great, aren't they? Do you think it's fair that your teachers now are going to be making a judgment of which level you are, rather than sitting down and doing a test and somebody outside marking it?
We know it's very much better than we do knowing a person who really marks them outside school.
We know our teachers will mark us the way we've worked, and it's easier because we know that our teachers will understand what we need to learn now and then.
So what was Lynn's impression of the school and their uptake of teacher assessment?
There's a willingness, they're keen, they've already started trialling and piloting it. And I thought the children were absolutely fantastic because they really truly understood why their teachers are going to be doing it and how their teachers really knew them and could therefore take their learning forward.
The last primary for Lynn to visit is Fairwater. The head, Heather Thomas, takes an open approach when selecting how to assess her children.
We've rewritten our schemes of work. We've looked really rigorously at all the level descriptors in them, and we've made sure that we actually match those so that people are not wasting time doing things that they don't need to do.
What about optional tests? Have you as a school decided that you're using any of those?
No, we don't. What we do is we'll take a bank of any materials that we think are useful. So if we did see an optional test that we thought might be useful for a teacher at a certain time to do with a certain group of children, then we would use that as part of our bank. But generally speaking, we wouldn't use them. We generally try to build in our assessment according to the sort of curriculum that the children are doing. So when teachers plan their class activities and their lessons, then they actually think, which ones of the level descriptors am I going to be covering? What do I need to be covering? Which children are at what levels? And how can I do that in my lessons? And then during lesson time, then you would assess how the children were doing. We don't do an awful lot of testing. We do an awful lot of assessing the children for their learning. So it'd be things like people will be asked to gather samples of writing, and then people will get together and they'll level them together.
Do you find that you've had any problems with any of this, with any of your staff saying, but I haven't got the time to be able to moderate, it's much quicker to give them a test?
No.
Good.
I think that would be true. I think it is quicker to give them the test, but it's not very satisfying, is it? It's not very...
Although it might take longer for teachers to assess, Heather feels that allocated PPA time gives teachers the time they need to assess their children.
So some weeks you don't need to do the same depth of planning as other weeks. So it might be light touch on the planning this week, but a lot of evaluation and then a lot of assessment then. And it's ongoing, and because they've got it every week, they know they can build it in.
Lynn went to meet Heather's Year 6 teacher, Abby Beacon. She found losing SATs daunting.
Nice to meet you.
I'm Lynn Cudling, nice to meet you.
There's a part of me that was a little unsure because I was having to completely rely on my own judgment, only because I hadn't been allowed to do that for such a long time. And that was the only scary bit, was having to rely on my own judgment. And now I feel really empowered by that. I became a teacher because I wanted to be a professional, as opposed to a technician or wanting to just follow a manual.
Abby enjoys the challenges of teacher assessment in her classroom.
I can look at how the children are doing and make assessments when I need to, instead of just having to do it at a certain time. And often I'm assessing children and they have no idea that it's even happening. So we do it in as non-threatening a way as possible. So obviously if you feel like you're being threatened, you're not going to perform to your best ability anyway.
I will always miss you, your brother Jim. That's lovely. That's really lovely.
He has, but...
Like all schools in the cluster, Fairwater has been involved in the cross-phase moderation project. Abby has found this process valuable.
Before we did lots of moderation between the two, our school and our high school, I didn't actually ever really get to know the people that I was sending the children up to. So I do get to meet them now, and we have the same expectations.
Actually, quite a specialist.
As part of the cross-phase moderation project, all of the schools in the cluster met to create portfolios of work. What were the consequences for Heather and her team?
We had to change our view because of the moderation, and we realised that actually we were being quite hard on the children.
That's interesting.
It did, because it also made us reflect on our previous benchmark information, and we'd been looking at some of our levels and thinking, well, why are we a little bit lower than other people? But after the moderation, we realised it was because we weren't looking at the context that the work was being done in. So that was really good professional development for us. But that's what we're doing.
The outcome of the process has been a bank of work with regionally agreed levels that can be used as a benchmark in levelling work.
So now we can use the local authority portfolio of evidence, if we want to, as well as our school English portfolio.
I'm really looking forward now to going and seeing secondary school to see how they've taken it on board, because certainly the evidence here seems to suggest that they're working really well with the secondary school and the whole transition appears to be going well.
At Cantonian High, Lynn's last stop, she met with Assistant Head Judith Pennicott and Deputy Head Maggie Haynes.
The test results were useful, they were of use. What we found is through teachers just talking to each other, through looking at work that they've done in the respective classes, it's built up an air of trust, an air of confidence, that staff are aware of the actual work. You know, when you handle a piece of child's work, you can actually see what they've done, whether it's the presentation. We have all these expectations about how things go down on paper, maybe what learning style the work was done in. So it's really built confidence and trust between the various groups of staff.
With a new system of assessment in place, Maggie feels that the process of cross-phase moderation is having a positive impact on the Key Stage 2 to 3 transfer.
Now it's possible to take a much more holistic view of a pupil's ability, aptitude to a particular area, and one which actually reflects their work over 2 or 3 years, or over a key stage, rather than over an hour and a half in a test for which they may or may not have been well prepared. So from a teaching point of view, from being able to be confident in the assessment of a pupil's attainment, it's a far stronger base on which to start.
So what does Lynn think of what she's seen?
I think there are lessons that can be learned from this visit to Wales that could be taken back to England. It's heartening to see that they're approaching assessment for learning in a very similar way to English schools. But of course it's going that one step further, isn't it? That they're going beyond that assessment for learning and taking that into developing summative assessment. They're developing work, they're developing ideas and strategies to enable teachers to say, this is a long-term process, I'm going to be looking at these children so that I can make a summative judgment.